I've lived in Taiwan for several years now, and I like this place a lot, but one of the biggest criticisms of life here has to do with wages. The salary is too low here, and I've heard this one over and over again. Sadly, it's a crushing reality. In 1997, the real average salary in Taiwan was 46,646 NTD a month. July 2014, 17 years later, the average working salary in Taiwan has barely budged, 46,786 NTD a month. This is a big reason why people leave and go to Australia or the United States or China. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about the stagnation in Taiwan's economy. So let's translate this vague feeling into economic concepts that we can more easily understand. I'm going to do some huge simplifications here, but these are sadly necessary in order to explain the issue in a way that fits into a short video. In an economy, capital and labor come together to create economic output. That output translates into income or profit or however you want to call it. Regardless, it describes the benefits of the capital and labor coming together. This income needs to be split between the holder of capital, the shareholders of a company, and the holders of labor, the company employees who do not hold share in the company and are not entitled to its profits. Think wage workers, Uber drivers, and entry-level analysts. So we can generally split Taiwan's recent economic history into three stages. First, a period of fast growth from 1981 to 1990. Second, a period of moderate growth from 1991 to 2000. And third, wage and economic stagnation from 2001 to 2012 and beyond. Consistent over these three stages is a decline in overall income and GDP growth year to year. Average economic growth in the 2001 to 2012 period was 3.25% a year, down from 6.25% in the 90s and 7.65% in the 80s. This is actually to be expected for a developing and rapidly aging nation like Taiwan. So we got a pie that's no longer getting as big as it used to be. So let's look at how that pie is being split up. Data compiled by the Taiwanese government shows that the share of the income going to labor has been declining since the 1980s. Taiwan's not actually unique in exhibiting this trend. The OECD has shown labor income share as declining for decades. I would like to say, and I probably would be right, that this is a global trend. But the absolute amount of the decline, combined with the weak starting position of Taiwan's labor, is unusual. We can compare with other areas in Asia. Singapore and Hong Kong are unique in that labor income share increased by some 10% from 1980 to 2011. South Korea, China, and Japan all exhibited similar trends though, where labor income share dropped across the board. The result is a situation where real wages essentially decouple from economic output. The economy on a whole might speed up or slow down, but the output income won't go to the workers. And because income isn't going to the workers, they feel like the economy is not helping them at all. This leads to a few questions, and we can come up with some, theories or ideas or suggestions explaining this declining income share. The first potential explanation is, well, the workers are getting better at their jobs, but for whatever reason, they're not getting paid for their output. To phrase this in economic terms would be labor productivity increases, but that growth is not reflected in incomes. This is the situation in Hong Kong and Japan, Japan since the 1990s. Hong Kong is a rather bad situation here. Workers there are working harder and produce a lot more with their work, but they're getting paid increasingly less for each marginal hour. Singapore and South Korea are somewhat the opposite situation. They're getting paid more for their marginal labor. So what does Taiwan's overall labor structure look like? Well, it's pretty stable. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So Taiwan's labor situation is not like Hong Kong's, where the workers are getting better at their jobs, but for whatever reason are vastly underpaid. On the whole, what the data seems to imply is Taiwanese people's pay are largely in line with the actual value they are delivering. That implies that on the whole, Taiwanese people are maybe just not that productive. There are a few theories again, so we can keep, if we would like to follow this line of thinking. The first, Taiwan's education system does not create a competitively productive labor force. Maybe what Taiwan's kids are learning do not make them particularly fit to do the job. Maybe their English language skills are poor. where Hong Kongers, Singaporeans, and even South Koreans vastly outperform them. Maybe the curriculum is not up to date, not enough skills relevant to the modern economy. A second idea, Taiwan's most productive people exit the system and go to be productive elsewhere. Brain drain is a consistent issue for every country in the world, except maybe America. But Taiwan is especially vulnerable because of the presence of nearby China, where strong language and societal ties abound. The third suggestion, Taiwan's companies operate in industries where labor productivity cannot be easily leveraged. Taiwan's current industry are mostly legacy hardware manufacturers or small service businesses like restaurants rather than software producers or finance. Software has been a huge boost to labor and economic productivity in other countries because of its high operating leverage. This means that one productive person can generate many multiples of output. Finance is another example of an industry with such high operating leverage. You don't need to invest in a factory to generate millions of dollars of financial fees. A fourth suggestion, the data is much more complicated than it at first seems, and we need to go deeper. So let's go deeper. We looked at this idea of Taiwan having a globally unproductive labor force and broke it down using two big pivot points, age and gender. And something that jumped out has to do more with age and tenure. Taiwan's older generations are not as well educated as its younger generations, where virtually everyone has a college degree. The older generations, they basically have a high school degree, and that's about it. However, it turns out that their labor wage, as compared to their productivity, is quite favorable. In other words, Taiwanese companies are paying these tenured people very well, especially in contrast with the younger people, who can be considered basically underpaid for the marginal labor productivity they generate. Because these large Taiwanese companies either cannot afford to or will not pay their younger people, smaller Taiwanese companies do the same. The result is that Taiwan's younger generations are no longer as socially mobile as their previous peers. This is a tough nut to crack. These older generations, are they being paid so disproportionately because Taiwanese work culture respects tenure and seniority above all? Or is it because they know more about the idiosyncrasies of each company, i.e., where all the bodies are buried, and they can keep it running? And then solving this issue, or making it, better, is challenging as well. Can you legally justify asking older people to leave their jobs just because they're overpaid, just so that they can be replaced by younger people? That sounds like age discrimination to me. So it's a very interesting situation, and just one of the few things that I found when I was researching this idea. Again, I won't say that this is a unique case. This effect is happening all over the world. And each of the Asian tigers have their own economic problems. Let's not single out Taiwan as this single unique case. I have said this before, but I think every country in the world, save the United States, needs to worry about low wages and wage-based brain drain of some sort taking their best workers. I want to write more about such economic issues in Taiwan down the line, but I want to leave you guys with a thought that I've been thinking about lately, especially in light of the recent global recession. I was reading about Hong Kong's labor capital situation, which to me seems especially dire, and came across a real interesting theory. You know how they say that China's populace is supposedly not politically or socially engaged because the government has been able to deliver lasting economic benefits, and that basically buys them off, buys the quiet. Well, what happens when a government cannot do that? What's the reverse of that? That's Hong Kong, where the economy and government has been utterly unable to improve its people's living standards. What this failure does is to create a generation of young people who have quote-unquote given up on being able to live a materialistic life, i.e. the traditional material goods associated with traditional success. Instead, they focus on non-materialist goals, like democracy, freedom of expression, and social justice. I think you may think that's a good thing, but if you're from the perspective of a government running a government looking to avoid social unrest at all costs, that's the last thing you would really want. So I guess my last question to leave you guys off with, what kind of values of today's recession generation do you think they will show in the future in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the world abroad. All right, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.